Hi, thanks for coming back and playing another tune with me here. I'm going to play through number 28 in the Melodious Etudes for Trumpet book, the Bordogni vocalises. I find these kind of like vitamins. They're in a few different styles, but they really help us to get in touch with that natural way of playing in terms of phrasing and expression, sound quality, and many other things. And a lot of times we're playing things that are just too difficult, too soon. I know I certainly did, and that leads to a lot of bad habits, and to kind of putting more emphasis on achieving, faster, higher, louder, rather than why we're playing the music in the first place, which is to communicate some kind of meaning to someone else and lead someone into an experience that's kind of outside of their normal everyday experience. So here's number 28. Bear with me as I attempt it, and then we'll go back and kind of look at some spots and practice through. Oh, okay. It's good exercise for me. Should do it more often. Actually, I do. I play through these quite a lot. Haven't played this one in a while, but it's always interesting to come back to material that you've worked on before and see how much deeper you can go with the possibilities, the musical possibilities. Just like a conductor who is well established in his career has probably conducted, if they're an orchestra conductor, Beethoven's Fifth or Tchaikovsky's Fourth many times, and yet they'll keep on going back to the score every time they conduct the piece to see what they can discover that they might not have noticed before. So let's do a little bit of that work now in this particular piece. The first thing that comes to mind is what I call singer's piano. You very rarely hear a singer, unless they're, like me, untrained, sing like da, da. See, because there's no tone. So a singer's piano has tone in it, and they're not worried so much about the dynamic levels, because singers many times are soloists. And so it's all about their direct connection with the audience. So if they're singing too tentatively, it's not going to work. And it's the same thing for us. So when you start out, I like dynamic contrast, and I like different colors in the sound. So sometimes I'm too careful, And that's fine in terms of the dynamic, but what does it do musically? See, I lost the phrase. I lost the sense of gesture. We'll talk about that in a minute. And what am I concentrating on? Just trying to hold the note. So my basic advice is always release the note. And you can keep working, believe me, you can keep working your whole life to get better at releasing the music. You're not actually creating anything. It's like they call it music for a reason. The muses from Greek mythology are giving, it's coming from outside ourselves, right? And we're hearing these things in our mind and our imagination, and then we're just letting it come through our body. And that letting go is one of the main things that you need to work on, especially when you see that piano or pianissimo dynamic. So suggestion, very simple. Play it at whatever's the most relaxed, comfortable, manageable dynamic, and then work through the entire spectrum of dynamics. A lot of times I'll go back and practice these are all articulated or all at a very, very high volume level. For example, just as variations of things to do. And it really stimulates your system. So try some of that stuff. I'll do it now. I'll probably clip the recording, but we'll see how this happens. So I'm going to play it now quite forte. I think you get the idea. If you play it all the way through the etude that way, for some of you it might feel more comfortable than playing it piano. For others it might feel more stressful, and that's where you kind of have to check out your own stuff when it comes to this dynamic range craftsmanship. It's very, very important. Now there are a couple things in here, and there are in a few other of the etudes. They're not very prevalent, but every once in a while you hear an ornament. You just heard one there. And ornaments are interesting. There's a section in the Arvin book, I can't remember the page, where it says something about the gruppetto. I don't know what a gruppetto is. I think it means a turn. And that's what we just had here. So how do you play it? That's a good question. See, this requires musical judgment. So what I'll do is play it in different rhythmic ways, and then what I'll end up doing is inflecting the turn. So if I went da 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 dee 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 da da dee da, so I subdivided it, and I'm putting the turn on an eighth note exactly. And that's good, but that sounds a little bit hyper to me. So now I'm going to start it a little bit earlier, so I can let it expand a little bit more, but I still have that sense of rhythm. And if I start it even a little bit earlier, then I have time to do a dum da ga da ga dee da ga da ga dee da ga da ga dee da da, and kind of let it catch up. So there are all kinds of musical possibilities here. What I recommend is play with it, sing it to yourself, put it in a rhythmic construct, and then play around with that rhythmic, with the kind of bones, the structure that you've created, and record yourself so you can hear whether it's working or not, because sometimes when we're busy with the ornaments, it doesn't work. Another quick tip about ornaments is most people tend to clamp down on ornaments, on trills. And you need to stay open. sound is just as free and just as even and just as connected all the way through, and that will make it really sound tasty, which is what we all like. Okay, there's something interesting that happens. Fortunately, we like interest, so you don't just have, as in a lot of pop music. No offense to pop music, there's classical pop music as well as classical music, if you will. But in pop music, a lot of times you have so there's a very insistent drive that's going on, and there's not too much variation from that. And that's one of the things you have to learn when you're playing pop music, is to let it get in that groove and just swing. That's great. Well, there's swing in classical music too, but there's also variation, and this kind of variation is harmonic variation. So at some point in the piece, I'll just make the transition for you. So he went into the minor mode. So he was in G major, and he switched over to the relative minor, E minor, and came back into G major again. That lends a little interest. The mood changes. It's kind of like listening to someone's emotional state changing. For me, one of the most prevalent evidences of that constant state of emotional change is in the music of Mahler. So listen to Mahler's symphonies or the songs, you'll get the idea, the flexibility of what's being communicated emotionally in music. Also, good idea to just be aware of that. So when you're playing, you're participating in that change to a different mode. You're hearing the harmonic context. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You're hearing the harmonic context, and that will really help you to play. Okay. Oh yeah, something that's very important in classical music, especially, is a sense of gesture, and that comes out in many of these songs, if you will. And right at the very beginning, you see how there's a sense of a change of intensity. So if I went, so there's always a sense of movement. As I'm conducting, and I strongly recommend that you do this, you don't have to conduct in a beat pattern, although that can help. But if that's annoying, just beat, and let your imagination of the music come out through your body. So it's you see, that's really allow yourself that indulgence. It really helps you to get a much stronger idea of what you actually want to do. And it might be different from what I'm doing here, but I hope you can indulge yourself in that. Now, there's some interesting gestures at the end, and as is typical of etudes, it gets more technically challenging at the end. So our craftsmanship, our skills tend to be challenged. I know I felt a little challenged by the time I got to the end. I wasn't managing my breath very well. So over-breathing a little bit, I got some stale air backed up, and I started to lose a little bit of control. And these are the kind of things you want to really work on. But what I'm going to recommend to you is practice the end first. If that's the case, that's where the challenge is, but it's especially challenging when you put those greater technical difficulties at the very end of the etude. And if you look at a lot of etudes, the Brandt etudes that you may be familiar with are a good example. They're designed that way. Some people think that's kind of mean. I think it's good training. So I'm going to just play the end. Thank you for indulging me in this. And maybe this is where I might practice it from. Let's see. Yeah, so he kind of makes a transition from the previous material. Just playing around. I like that right at the end. Maybe not physically, but I like it musically. You see that big gesture? Let me try once more. Getting the time. Yeah. So I hope that gives you a lot of ideas you can start to put into practice. Be patient. Work on one thing at a time. If you can't keep your concentration, switch to something else. That way you can stay engaged for a long time. Spend time conducting it to yourself, singing it to yourself. Rest as much as you play. And that way you're kind of building something instead of just, pounding your chops and putting in more time on the horn. You're actually constructing something that's going to hopefully hang over at least until tomorrow when you pick up the horn again. So enjoy your practice, and I'll see you later on. Thanks. Bye-bye.